This is a true story from Edinburgh, Scotland, in the years 1827 to 1828. It is about two men who did something shocking and strange. They killed people not out of anger, not out of hate, but to sell the bodies for money. This story became known as the Westport murders. In the early 1800s, Edinburgh was one of the best places in the world for medical schools. Students came from everywhere to learn about the human body. But there was a big problem. Doctors needed real human bodies to teach their students. At that time, the only legal bodies doctors could use were from people who died in prison or on the street with no family. This was not enough. There were many students, but very few legal bodies. So a dark business started growing, body snatching. People called resurrection men would dig up fresh graves at night and sell the bodies to medical schools. Everyone in Edinburgh knew about this. Families even sat at graves at night to protect their dead loved ones. Now we meet the two men at the center of this story, William Burke, William Hare. They were both from Ireland. They were poor. They worked simple jobs. They lived in a part of Edinburgh called Westport. They were not famous. They were not special. They were just two normal men trying to survive. But their lives changed when a man died in Hare's lodging house. Hare ran a small boarding house where people rented cheap rooms. One day, a man staying there died owing Hare money. Hare was angry about losing the unpaid rent. Instead of calling the police or burying the body normally, Hare had an idea. He told Burke, "What if we sell the body to the medical school?" Body snatching was already happening in the city. So they took the dead man's body and brought it to a famous anatomy teacher named Dr. Robert Knox. Dr. Knox bought the body immediately. Burke and Hare walked out with a lot of money, much more than the rent the man owed. And in that moment, something changed inside them. They realized there is money in dead bodies. More money than we can earn any other way. The money from the first body felt easy, but they had a problem. Legal dead bodies were rare. Bodies in good condition were also hard to find. So Burke and Hare made a terrible decision. They decided not to wait for people to die naturally. They would make their own bodies. They would kill people and then sell the corpses. This was not something anyone had seen before. Other people stole bodies from graves, but Burke and Hare became something else. They killed on purpose to sell the bodies. Burke and Hare avoided leaving marks on the bodies. The doctors needed bodies that looked natural, with no cuts or bruises. So they developed a method. Hare held the victim down. Burke covered the victim's mouth and nose and pressed on their chest. This caused the victims to suffocate quietly. There were no obvious injuries. Later, this became known as burking. They did not choose well or powerful people. They looked for people who were poor, lived alone, or would not be missed. Their victims were often travelers, elderly women, alcoholics, homeless people, or people with no close family around. They invited victims into Hare's lodging house with the promise of drink, food, or a bed. Then they carried out the murders. In total, they killed at least 16 people in about 1 year. Some historians believe it could have been more. Each time they killed someone, Burke and Hare carried the body to Dr. Knox's anatomy school. Knox never asked questions. He paid well and paid quickly. Sometimes they got the money the same day. Sometimes Knox even smiled with excitement when they brought in a fresh body. Burke and Hare were making more money than ever before in their lives. They used the money to drink, party, and live better than they ever had. But they also became greedy. The killings became more frequent, and like all criminals who get comfortable, they eventually made mistakes. Their final victim was a woman named Margaret Docherty. This time Burke and Hare were not careful. There were other people in the house who saw strange behavior. They heard noises in the room. They saw Burke and Hare acting nervous. After the murder, Burke tried to hide the body under straw, but someone discovered it. When the police came, Burke and Hare tried to lie, but the body was found at Dr. Knox's school, exactly where people suspected it would be. The truth was now beginning to come out. The police had a problem. They knew Burke and Hare had done terrible things, but there was not enough evidence. Most of the bodies had already been cut up in anatomy classes. So the police made a deal. They told Hare, "If you tell us everything and testify against Burke, we will let you go." Hare agreed. He gave a full confession. He blamed almost everything on Burke. He explained how the murders happened. He showed the police where some victims had died. Burke was now trapped. Burke was taken to trial. Crowds filled the courtroom. People in Edinburgh were shocked, angry, and afraid. Everyone wanted to know, how could two normal men kill people just to make money? Burke was found guilty. His punishment was hanging, and there was something symbolic about his fate. After he was hanged, his own body was given to the medical school for dissection, just like the people he killed. His skeleton is still displayed in Edinburgh today. He was released after the deal, but the people of Edinburgh hated him. They threw stones at him. He escaped the city in the middle of the night. After that, no one knows exactly what happened to him. Dr. Knox, he never faced legal punishment, but the public blamed him. His career was damaged. He moved away from Edinburgh to start over. The Burke and Hare case shocked the whole country. People were terrified of body snatching. They were angry at the medical schools. They demanded better laws. A new law was made, the Anatomy Act of 1832. This law allowed medical schools to use bodies from poorhouses and hospitals legally. This meant doctors no longer needed grave robbers, and no one needed to kill for bodies anymore. The Westport murders changed the whole medical system in Britain. The story of Burke and Hare is disturbing because it shows how far some people will go for money. It also shows how desperate the medical world was for bodies during that time. Today, when people talk about the Westport murders, they remember ordinary men who became killers, a city terrified of losing its dead, and how one crime forced a country to change its laws forever. This story is a reminder that even simple people can create dark history, and that sometimes the truth is stranger and scarier than anything we make up.